Hello, BasketNews fans, and welcome to another episode of Hoops Journeymen. I'm Mindaugas Gobikas, and of course, Manny Alvarez is with me. My Californian friend. Hello, and how are you today?
Pretty good. I'm not deadly tired as last time. I've got my hours of sleep. I'm not driving 4 hours for softball, so I'm just back from the gym. So we're good to go.
All right, good to have you. Good to see you. It's been a while. So
Likewise.
yeah, let's get things going. So, but yes, you already mentioned it last time we spoke. You were on your way to play this softball game, and I don't know if you remember, but I set the goal for you to go. What was it? 3 for 4 with 2 runs and 2 RBIs. So did you do that?
So I think we played 4 games. So we had 3 games on Saturday and then one on Sunday. Um, that first game after, like right after we finished, I changed and I drove to the field. I think I got one hit the first game, but then I started picking it up. So I think I did go 3 for 4. So I did accomplish your dreams. So
All right, good. You didn't
yeah, yeah.
embarrass me, right?
No. Actually, I
Yeah.
was surprised myself. I was hitting the ball very well. I had to show you the video, but we only played one game on Sunday. It was a playoff. You lose, you're out,
Okay.
and we lost. The umpire was making bad calls, and I have it on video. The umpire made a bad call, and I'm coaching third base, making sure our runners are getting home.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you see me run from third base to the middle of the field, just yelling at the umpire. Like, you don't hear me say anything, but you see me pointing at the umpire, pointing at the base, pointing back, and then someone has to go grab me and pull me away. And then you hear me say, I think I said, I don't know if I can swear, but I said, God damn it, like out loud. You can hear me from far away. But yeah, I got to send you the video. But I don't know if you've ever seen like baseball coaches get angry, or football coaches get angry at referees. But it's like that, just pointing and just screaming at them. Um, my teammates saw it and they just kind of laughed. Like, man, you had a temper. I'm like, I did.
Well, so were you close to being tossed out of the game? Like,
I was very close. Yeah, the umpire was just looking at me like, keep going, keep going. Like I was pointing at him and the base. It's like my guy didn't leave early. This and that, blah blah blah, and just pointing. And finally, the guy that runs our team, grabbed me. He's like, hey, let it go, and push. So, a little temper tantrum, but we lost. But you know what? Like I said, the hitting was fun.
I'm losing you. Can you
Are
hear
you
me well?
hello?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
Good.
can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. So yes, softball, recreational softball. What is slow pitch
Right.
softball? Yes, it's a lot of fun. I see what you're saying, and it can get emotional. And I mean, it's still sport, and it's fun to play, and you do it with your teammates. So it's a good time.
Oh,
So
I'm a competitive guy, so the competitive person kind of gets a little over the line sometimes. And
yeah.
I apologize to the umpire after the game, but it can get out there.
Yeah, no worries. But what I was gonna say, so it's somewhat close to what we're gonna have, what we're gonna talk about today, and it's a recreational sport. It's not professional. It's for people who just enjoy sports, but not as seriously. And so, what we're gonna talk today about is fantasy sports. So, um, first of all, do you play fantasy sports?
I come on, yeah.
You do?
I
Okay.
love. I have 4 fantasy football teams right now, and I try to play fantasy basketball and fantasy baseball. But what's great about fantasy football is there's maybe 2 or 3 game days where you have to like focus on the games. For basketball, you have to update your lineup every day. You know, hey, Lamelo's now playing today, so take him out of your starting lineup and put in, CJ McCollum, or Damian Lillard or LeBron James. Put them in the lineup because they're playing. The next day they're not playing. Lamelo's playing, or Trey Young's playing. You got to move them around, or you got to go pick up these players. And so, same with baseball. Like Mike Trout isn't playing today. You got to put in Shohei Ohtani. And it's constant every day. Where football, it's once or twice a week. You got to go find the players to go pick up and drop. I lost some players to injury. It's a lot of work, but yeah, I'm addicted to it, especially with football.
It's amazing because for me, it's absolutely opposite reasons. Like I've tried NFL football once. I sucked at it. Well, I mean, it's obviously it's more difficult. You have defense, offense, lots of players. It's just a little bit more. You need to be more knowledgeable. But the number one reason I didn't like it is that you have that one game per week. So to wait the whole week for just something to happen on Sunday, for me, it's bullshit. I don't like it. That's why I love baseball. Every day you have situation changing, and then basketball, hockey, similar. So yes, I now I'm playing baseball, and now I'm in the playoffs, and I'm started really well my week, and I'm on my way to probably second round. So that's great. But for me, the more games every day, the better it is, because then you don't have to wait. You constantly have some kind of action, going, and results updating and something like that. So, but yeah, interesting. So
You know,
yeah.
yeah, I'm quite the opposite. I need to have that free time to focus on every day, like changing my lineup every day, and I don't have that. And so now I have 5 days and I'm busy at work. And when I have that free chance, I go and update my lineup. I add my players to take out my players. But yeah, it's frustrating. Last week I had 4 teams, I said. Only one team won and the other three, lost. And so it's like all that work for that one day and then three of my teams lost. It's like, oh man. And it's because I had a bunch of Green Bay Packers and the Green Bay Packers just, got destroyed. But yeah, I get it. You have one bad day in baseball, you just go ahead and start the day over tomorrow. But in football, you have one bad day, you lose. And that entire week of just finding players and getting ready was a waste.
Yeah. Um, and then also you said you had four teams, because eventually, yes, I used to have more than one team in the same sport, but then I got to a point where, for example, I have, Shaquille O'Neal on one of my teams, and then I don't have him on the other team. And then, when Shaquille drops 43, and I'm like, so in one situation I'm happy because I get 43 from him to one of my teams, whereas on the other one he's on the opposition, and I'm not happy with his 43. So I'm like, it gets confusing. You kind of cheer and then you don't, and so in the end, I only play one team per sport per year. It's like a real life experience. Yes, you get injured, you get your main player gets injured. Oh well, sucks. It's life. It's something like as close to real life as possible. That's my approach.
What's weird is I had that situation where I had like the Cleveland Browns defense and they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. And on my other team, I have, Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback of the Chiefs, and the wide receiver of the Chiefs. And so okay, well, which one do I want to root for? Because if the Browns do well in defense, that means my Chiefs players aren't doing that great, or vice versa. So it's like one has to die and one has to live. But yeah, I fall for that. I always fall into like, oh wait, my defense is playing this offense with all these players I have. What do I do? So I get that. I totally get it.
All right. So what's your number one reason for playing fantasy sports?
Wow, that is a good reason. I don't know how it started. I think it was I was just I just tried it and I got addicted. It's like I have an addictive personality. I'm addicted playing softball. I'm addicted to going to the gym. And I think I just kind of found that. And I think just the competition and bragging with your friends. I used to work at ESPN and we had our own fantasy football league. And we did the same thing where we were trying to brag in the office. Hey, man, I beat your team, man. What happened to your team? I beat you up. Today I met with a friend who's in my league. And he said, hey, man, what happened to your team? Like all your Packer players just kind of, they kind of just kind of fell down. I'm like, oh, dang it. I didn't want to hear it, but, I knew he was going to brag. The money, you win money. I know one league, I won $250 US dollars, last year. My old work league, it was at a TV station I worked at. We still play and we have a trophy. And I'm the commissioner, so I have to hand that trophy over every year. And that's what sucks. We've had, I think, 8 years of this trophy, and my name is not on that trophy. And I got to hand it to someone every year, and it sucks. But I'm like, one day that trophy is going to be in this room, and I'm going to hold it with pride.
All right, because for me, it's that wanting to sort of imagine how running of an actual team feels like, because you get to draft players, you get to trade players, you get to set up the lineups and things like that. So to me, it's somewhat a real life experience of managing the sports franchise or whatever. I mean,
You're like
sure,
on the
it's
sideline with your clipboard and your headset, and trying to call the players. And I mean, you're really every now and then, if I'm at the gym or just at home watching TV or with the friends watching the game, I feel like I'm inside my head just screaming at my quarterback, like, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you throwing it that? Why did you throw that interception? Why'd you drop the ball? This and that," like in my head. But yeah, I feel like I'm the coach just walking up and down the sidelines.
because sometimes for me it's like if it in baseball you have just day when a whole bunch of your players just go for four. I feel like I would walk in the locker room and I would say, guys, like, where is our energy, the hustle, the whatever, the hard work? Like, we can't go for four, all of us. We just, like, what's up? So yeah, that's my number
Then they
one
had that
reason.
the imaginary press conference after the game.
Yes, that's right. Yes. After the losing streak or after a winning streak. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, exactly. All right. So I think it still came from America, as most things
Yeah.
related to professional sports. So give us a little taste of that. Is it because I mean you've already touched upon it briefly, but so how deep in the popular culture the fantasy sports and the whole experience around it goes in the U.S.
It started late 70s, like very early 80s. And it was just a group of friends that met. And I noticed they had a documentary on it a long time ago, and I just fell in love with it. But they were eating at a rotisserie chicken place, and they're talking about owning their own team. Like, can you imagine owning your own team and having these players? And someone said, "You know what? We can do that. Let's pick players. We'll go with stats, and we'll do this." And it was just this like random idea, and that's how it started. Fantasy baseball. They picked up the players of the '80s. They had Dave Winfield, Mike Schmidt, Nolan Ryan, um, George Brett. The players from back in the day, and it was so much fun. And then they started making it more public, and all of a sudden, all these people are starting to play, and they're trying to figure out they had to make up rules as they gone along the way. What to do with the auction. They did like an auction, and they had no idea how much a player was worth on the auctions. And what sucks is the people that created it was called the Rotisserie League because they created it in a rotisserie chicken restaurant. They never what's the word when you invent something? They never
Like
patent it.
yeah, they never patented, didn't get
And so,
credit for it. Yeah,
so somebody else swiped it,
yeah,
and all of a sudden now this huge craze. They could have been billionaires out of it,
yeah.
and but that's how it all started. And all of a sudden, it went from fantasy baseball to fantasy football, basketball, soccer, hockey. I mean, there's it's insane. I remember I was just listening to a show. They're talking about how you have fantasy politics about senators and presidents. I'm like, that's a little insane. I can't do that. I already hate politics as it is, especially here in America. I would stay away from that. I'll just do sports.
And then, well, I read this book by Matthew Berry, who is this
Here's the guru. Yeah.
guru of fantasy sports, and what was interesting is that he traded a successful uh movie. What was he was writing scripts for movies, and
Yeah.
and and so he was successful at it. I think he was a script writer for Crocodile Dundee movie, something like that. So anyway, so
See, I didn't know that. Wow.
he was successful, but yet he traded it for being a fantasy sports analyst and providing all that content and everything. So what I'm saying is it's like when you hear these stories that you guys like group of people, they gather for a party and they have the draft night that day. Like they all get together and then they do drafts, and then it becomes more of a social thing. And as you already said, at work you speak to your colleagues like, "Oh, I beat you last week," or "Oh, you sucked, the other day," this and that. So it's more of a, everyone is more involved. It seems that way in the States in fantasy.
And I forgot to mention the drafting. There was one live draft, which the last episode we had here, I missed that live draft. So I had a draft through the phone as I was driving on my way home. And I was upset because I love doing a live draft. They have the big board and like, "Hey, Manny, you're up." And I'll go pick the name and put it on my board. And that was so much fun. That was like the most fun part, trying to figure out who am I going to get, looking at your sheets and the magazines and your laptop, looking at all the information like, well, this guy's available. This guy might be available when it's my turn. I'll get him. If not, I'll get this guy. And then, the guy before you picks the guy you want. I'm like, shit, I wanted that guy. Damn it, you asshole. And then you pick the other guy, but that's that strategy, like plan A, plan B, where do I go?
There's nothing worse when you plan a guy and it just gets snagged right
They'll
in front
pick,
of you, like
they'll pick
one
before
pick
you.
ahead of you. Yes, it sucks. But so yeah, you think your story is special. So no, in Matthew's book, he collected a whole bunch of stories, like the weirdest place people did their live draft. So there were a story about what's the name of a guy who gets the married groom?
Best man, groom?
No,
Groom.
the actual the husband.
Yeah, the groom.
Okay,
The groom, yeah.
so the groom was doing it during his wedding via cell phone, like sending text, and because it was so that important to him. Yes.
And his wife was okay with this.
I guess so. The story doesn't cover that part, but yeah,
I gotta if that's the case, I gotta find me a lady like that. So
yeah, all right.
And what's funny is there's a TV show here called The League. I had 7 years on the show, and it talked about fantasy football and life. It was a comedy show, and it was so funny because they talk about, it would be like they would have the Sunday where they have all the games, and then they have to quickly make a show in 4 days about those games and then about their life in general and how like fantasy football just gets in the way of life. Like, their friend died and they had to do the fantasy football the night before the funeral, and they were like, they had to go take care. They had to go like play guard in front of the casket while doing the fantasy football draft, or like they have like athletes show up and make guest appearance. Chad Ochocinco, Terrell Owens, Tony Gonzalez, and I mean I think that show made it even more popular because it was like these actors and comedy, and they talked about the reality of fantasy football.
So in Europe, I don't think we have the same, because on my personal experience, I've been into fantasy sports for many years, and I've tried to had somewhat similar experience here in Europe, and it wouldn't be like that. So like I would set up the league for my colleagues from sports websites and whatnot, and after 3-4 weeks the chatter just kind of dies down. You try to keep up the conversation, who does good and who's not, and blah blah blah, and then like I say, 3-4 weeks in, it kind of dies down, and 3-4 players are still active while the others, they don't even log in to check whatever's going on. So it's not the same.
I remember when we did the JBA USA tour in Europe, the only few people that played fantasy football were, I think, my broadcasting partner, Alan Bell, ABD
Yep.
Hero.
Yeah.
And I never talked to him about it, but the one guy I did talk about was Harrison Rieger, Free Rieger.
Yeah.
We talked about it constantly. Like, hey man, how'd your team do? I'm like, man, I had this guy. He had a quarterback that broke his leg in Washington, Alex Smith.
And I
remember thinking like, dude, you had Alex Smith. That sucks, man. That I couldn't make fun of him for it because of what happened to Alex Smith. You felt terrible. But I remember we were in Lithuania, and there was I think he's a reporter, or he was just someone that was just that Alan ABD Hero would talk to a lot, who had the NFL League Pass, the where you can watch any game anywhere. And we were in that campground in Lithuania, and he hit the projector to the game, and we're just watching. And I remember, I think I had a tight end from the Bengals who broke his leg, and we watched his leg break on live TV in the projector. And Harrison knew I had him. I was like, oh, dude, that's a tough blow. I'm like, oh, I can't believe this. I'm like, at least I'm watching football here in Lithuania, but man, that sucks. And it happens all the time. We see a player get hurt. I'm like, damn, what do I do now? Who do I pick up?
Yeah.
But I remember in Lithuania, I mean, we talk about it all the time. That was the only time I had to run with the basketball team, but also check my fantasy football the whole time.
Right. And then one year when I was teaching at the university, I was teaching a sports business class. And so I tried to make it more interesting to students, and I decided to set up the fantasy league. But it was the spring semester. So, we didn't have, the only sport that was available was baseball. And of course, baseball is not popular in Lithuania. Nobody knows it. Nobody watches it.
I think there's only one player in the major leagues in Lithuania.
Yes, the pitcher probably with the Pittsburgh, I think, but he's
Pittsburgh, yeah,
relief pitcher. So anyway, so I set it up. I even award a prize. Whoever finishes first, gets an A+ for the whole class and this and that. They didn't even care about that. That was like, we did this draft, computer did the draft for us. It wasn't live, based on ratings. And they just, like, a few weeks, I try to, make it interesting, see who's up, who's down, whatever. But I saw these, glass eyes in all of my students as like, okay, whatever. So if you don't want to do it, that's fine. So yeah, it didn't catch on.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm assuming, yeah, because up in the Latvia and Lithuania, I'm assuming they don't know. Maybe like the top players like Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani, but outside of them, they don't know all these other players. These Trey Turner. I mean, or I'm trying to think of other names. Grant Green, because I played baseball with him growing up, but I figured they wouldn't know who's who. It's like you need an extra player in fantasy football. Sometimes they bring in the girl, and she has no idea what to do, and she's just picking. It's like, is Brett Favre still in the league? I'm like, no, he retired 10 years ago.
Yeah, but to me, it's like, okay, if you're in the sports management field, I mean, you still kind of like sports, and it's not a rocket science. I mean, sure, you don't know, but you just spend, half an hour here and there, and you kind of get to, get the feel for it. It's not a.
Would it be the same thing for European football?
For soccer, you mean?
Yeah,
I guess I've never played soccer because, again, one of the reasons I play only these American sports is just because they have so much stats, and stats to me it's important, and interesting. Yeah. Whereas in soccer, you just have goal, assist, I don't know, corner kick, free kick. I mean, some kind of bullshit stats, random stats. That is.
I cover high school sports. Soccer is so easy to do stats. So
yeah, they don't have a lot, right?
Goal, save, assist. That's about it. And then you got to get the time of the goal. So that's it.
Yeah. So I've never played, but I'm sure there are plenty of fantasy soccer in Europe, and I assume they're pretty big and popular, but I've never done, so I can't really comment on that. But yeah, then let's get to this point, to this question. So do you think you need to like that particular sport in order to play fantasy, or it can be you don't like the sport, but you start playing fantasy and slowly it kind of drags you into liking sport? Which way do you think?
It could be a little bit of both. I mean, I think you have, like, I remember I tried to play fantasy hockey, and I was terrible at it because I like hockey, but I'm not that knowledgeable about, the top players. I try to do it when I was like growing up, like loving hockey and knowing the players like Wayne Gretzky, Luke Robitaille, Poppy Volin, the goalie, Dominic Hasek, all those players. But as time gone on, I just kind of stayed distant from hockey because I was so busy with football and basketball and baseball. I tried to get back to it recently, and I had no idea who these players were, except for like a few of them. Alex Ovechkin and Jeremy Crosby. But I guess you have to really kind of have to be knowledgeable about it, and perhaps maybe you fall in love with the sport. Let me give this a try, and all of a sudden you love hockey. It's like me. The reason why I fell in love with hockey is because someone gave me a video game of hockey. I'm like, well, I figured I might as well play this, and I fell in love with it for a minute, and then I stopped playing it, and I drifted off, and I forgot about it. I mean, you got to be knowledgeable. If not, you're going to be losing games left and right. I mean, you're going to be picking the wrong players, and that's what I did with hockey. I picked the wrong players.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's a bit of both, and I would actually go with the first one. Like, you probably have to like the sport and know something about it in order to play. But also I it's funny. I do have the same hockey story. Like, I never liked hockey that much, but when I was doing my studies in Canada, it's a hockey country. You can't
Well,
escape hockey. And so someone set up a fantasy league, and so you say, "Do you want in?" Sure, I want in. I like you said, I didn't know players at all, but before draft, I did my research, and I drafted a team, and I did really well. And then out of that, I noticed that I started following games. Like, all of a sudden, I
yeah,
watched the whatever Calgary Flames versus Carolina Hurricanes, and now I know the players who are skating there, who doing scoring goals or whatever. So I feel like the fantasy kind of dragged me into loving hockey, and now I'm a big fan of hockey. I even play myself. Started to play fucking at the age of 30. So yeah.
yeah, I can't do that. I feel like part of me though, like when I was following the hockey, it's like we have like there's this like fun thing you do in the ice rink over here. I don't know if they do it over there, called a broom ball, where you're playing with like a round ball and
I know
these sticks that look
they
like
have
broom.
that
Okay,
in Wisconsin, but they don't have it in Lithuania. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've played it in Wisconsin.
and
So
I always played goalie, and I was really good at it. And I was thinking, man, if I played hockey, I would probably be goalie. I mean, I'm probably a little smaller for a goalie, but I mean, I can't. I think I fell in love with that because I started knowing about hockey, and that obviously, like I said, I drifted away. I like how you mentioned you go to games and check out these players that you have on your team. When I worked at ESPN, I mean, and that showed the league. They talked about Antonio Gates. He had this awful game, and the guy that had Antonio Gates on his team was so upset, and he was very vulgar and like just bad language. Like, I hope Gates gets cancer and dies. Like, whoa, man, relax. And then at the end of the show, he's in the jacuzzi, and all of a sudden, Antonio Gates makes an appearance on the show, sitting in the jacuzzi, and instead of saying, "Hey, man, you're Antonio Gates. Oh my God, I love you. You're my favorite player." It's like, "Oh, Antonio Gates." I'm like, "You ruined me this week, man. You destroyed me." It's like, "I hate you." And I guess he tries to punch Antonio Gates. And I'm thinking, I wonder if people ever run into athletes. I'm like, "Hey, like LeBron James." I'm like, "You screwed me this week, man. What the hell? Like, F you." Instead of saying, "Hey, man, like I enjoy you're my favorite player, man. Can I get a photo?" I wonder if that happens to people like a Mike Trout. "Hey, man, I need you back. I picked you. I haven't played all year, man. Screw you."
I'm sure it does, especially
Yeah.
if the stakes are high. If there's some
Oh
kind of
yeah.
league where there's the money prize, and if it's a final game, and if it's someone drops a touchdown pass or whatever, I'm sure it's a big deal. I mean, it's probably not as big deal as what's the Cubs famous fan who
Oh,
interrupt.
Bartman.
Yeah,
God,
yeah,
poor guy.
Steve something. Yes, I watched that game. I'm a Cubs fan from baseball, so I watched that game. It was all wrapped up, like we had it, and the fucker just interrupts the whole thing. Oh man. So
Hey,
yeah,
not his fault. The Cubs couldn't finish the damn game. But
yeah, but if in that play the game would have been finished, right? Yes, of
you know
course.
what's
After that, they could have still stayed in the game, but it's just fucking. It's such a
yeah, dude.
hit
And,
psychologically.
and side note, remember like when I think they were trying to get into the World Series playing the Dodgers, and there was a foul ball going into the like the first base fence, and all of a sudden you see a photo of all the fans pushing all the other fans away. I'm like, don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it.
Right. So when there was this whole debate, like, did he do something wrong and this and that? And I liked one argument that, some fans are knowledgeable, and they showed a whole bunch of videos where there's foul ball coming in, and people like, okay, we're getting out of the way in order for our play to catch the ball and get an out. Whereas you're stupid, you just fucking go for it. So yeah.
But yeah, you talk about athletes, and I think you were going to mention something about maybe like, do athletes play this? And I'm assuming.
So do you think, yes, actual players play fantasy sports? Yeah.
I have to say maybe they do, just very privately. But I feel like that would affect their game, like maybe, they pick themselves and all of a sudden you're in your head. I don't know why. I mean, I feel like it's like, you know what? Why play fantasy when I'm already playing it right now? Like, I'm the guy. It's not fantasy. This is life. This is what I do for a living. This is my career. Why am I playing fantasy? So I kind of feel like maybe they don't, but maybe some people do privately, but they don't gamble, because obviously we all know what happened with Pete Rose. But I mean, they already deal with enough pressure it is, and they don't have to do with the fantasy. So.
Yes, but following your logic, then, do they play video game, NBA 2K?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, we see it all the time. There's, there's probably videos on YouTube of maybe like Jason Tatum playing against a fan, or Trae Young's playing against someone else. I'm sure LaMelo Ball. I mean, again, we're talking about that JBA tour in Europe. I mean, I remember we're in Belgium, and like, man, we're in Belgium. We're going to check out these great areas. We're in Moscow. We're in London. We're in in Latvia, and I'm like, me and a few others, like, we're gonna go just sightsee, check out these places, and then like the majority of the athletes, what are they doing? They're in their PS4, just playing video games all the time. It's like, guys, like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, but I'm sure that's what they do. I mean, and we see on YouTube where there's a fan playing against an athlete, and like, this is so cool. I'm playing against Jason Tatum,
Yeah, I hear you, but I think they are playing fantasy. Although, when I was, preparing for the topic, I was thinking, are they actually allowed to play fantasy sports? Because, yes, you could get into situation where, imagine I'm a player and I don't have myself on my team, and you have me on your team, and my team is facing your team this week. And so my actual points go against me for you. And so if we have the big prize on the line, I might start thinking, okay, maybe I don't score 30 points today in order for me not to lose against you.
I think the majority would be, you know what, I'm not going to touch this, but I think if someone has an addictive personality, and they play and it just goes over that, because I mean, when you're addicted to something, you have no control over it. And I feel at some point, if they play and have no control over it, that might happen, and they forget, like, hey, this is my career and I'm making millions. Maybe I should forget about it,
Right.
And I think, and perhaps maybe they saw what happened to Pete Rose. Yeah. Everything he did, one of the greatest baseball players ever, and he can't get in the Hall of Fame because he just got addicted to gambling, and gambling against other games, and gambling, for his team to win.
Yeah. But then also, the information that other fantasy players probably don't, like, the injuries to the players, like your teammate who might have a minor injury, but that's not reported. So
it's like nobody, insider,
right?
Like insider trading.
Yes. So,
yeah.
So that he is gonna play, but he's not 100%. Like he's limping a little bit. So that, but others, they don't, because it's not official information yet. It's not as serious. So to me, those are kind of things that I think that might prevent players from actually playing fantasy sports, but probably not, because we know there are competitive people, most of them really, really competitive people. Yeah. So give them a reason to compete at whatever, they'll probably take it. So, but my question is, again, all of them think that they are absolute best. Well, most of them think that they're absolute best at what they do. So imagine, no disrespect, but if you're CJ McCollum, a great player, but I mean,
Of course.
I probably, all of us agree that not a number one draft pick in fantasy sports. So, but if you're CJ McCollum and you get the number one draft pick in your league, do you think he drafts himself or he goes and stays fair and drafts, LeBron, Doncic, or Giannis? What do you think?
Yeah, if I were him, now I'm already thinking if I had the number one pick in basketball, who would I pick? Um, Definitely not Kawhi because he sits a lot. Um,
Yeah, but,
Doncic though.
but do you think he drafts
But
himself because he just thinks, okay,
I
I'm
wouldn't.
still the best player, regardless
I'm
of.
thinking. I'm thinking, man, I better be available in round three.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, but there are those people that have that ego saying I'm the best ever, and so if you're
Exactly.
round,
Yeah.
you pick one, you're thinking I'll go with Doncic, but then again, who knows? It depends on that ego. I mean, I don't think CJ has an ego because he probably would have asked to leave Portland by now.
Yeah. And so I asked this question one of my colleagues here on Basket News, and he is he's plugged in with a lot of players. So his answer was interesting. He thinks that majority of European players would not pick themselves because they know that they're not the best and they're staying fair to that. But he says if it's an American guy, I'm sure he just drafts himself because they all think they are number one and they
Exactly.
staying with it and they believing in that and they would go with that. So to me it was an interesting observation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm going to guess the American players for sure. I don't know what the European player thinks, but for a lot of American players, yeah, they think their shit don't stink, and they're the greatest thing ever. Um, and obviously, I mean, hey, look, again, we're bringing up JBA and Labar. I mean, that's how the way he talks, and that's the way a lot of players do. Do talk like their shit don't stink. So, and I will say this, just to bring it up, I'm wondering at what point did anyone bring up to the NBA or the NFL, like in the early 80s, like, hey, this fantasy sports stuff's catching up. We should probably take advantage of this. I mean, I wonder what would happen if the NBA said, you know what, let's take advantage of this and start fantasy basketball over here and then make a profit out of it. And if so, I'm wondering if they're beating themselves up like, dang, we had that opportunity and we blew it.
Well, so yes, I absolutely agree with you, but so my first question is, so who is actually producing the fantasy content? Is it the league or is it the media companies? So you think the league could do that? Because I'm thinking that it's probably not. They couldn't do that on them by themselves.
Uh, as far as trying to, produce like what Yahoo Sports does or ESPN Fantasy does,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, they probably would have figured it out and had their own, system, just like Yahoo and ESPN. Instead, ESPN and Yahoo are the two biggest ones making so much profit, or DraftKings. Those three are making all that profit right now. But they would have had their own system. They would have figured it out eventually. Yahoo figured it out eventually, and so did ESPN Fantasy. And recently, DraftKings did the creative thing of every week with gambling money. Um, but I'm sure, I think in the '90s it was always through mail. I think Sporting News used to do one. I was trying to think of it. There's a one used to be called Athon Sports. I think they still exist, but they could have taken advantage of that. I feel they would have gone the route of Yahoo Sports. I mean, Yahoo. The only reason Yahoo really exists is because of fantasy sports. I mean, no one uses Yahoo anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Right. But so I'm just looking at the NBA website and they have this fantasy section. And so they have these authorized gaming operators and then Yahoo Fantasy Sports, FanDuels, and blah, blah, blah. So, but they don't have anything their own. So I'm just thinking it's probably not their part of business. I'm sure they can probably license it, but to me it's I think it's a media's business, because they all provide this readership content, the analysis, the stats, the projections, etc., etc. Whereas the league, I don't think it would be even ethical for them. Imagine at the beginning of the year they provide the projections of their players, and they project that LeBron will play 60 games and score 23 points, and LeBron's like, okay, no, I'm fucking gonna play 82 and score 30. So it's like, I don't know. To me, it seems like it's media's business, but
Well,
not leagues.
I know NFL.com has, as hey, here's your list of people you should start. Here's a list of people you should sit. So they have that. I think more of the lines of what would happen if they took advantage of this and started their own fantasy chain on their own in their own league, with, and instead of, NBA would have their own fantasy league from the actual NBA. And I think they kind of blew the mark there.
Yeah,
I mean, can you imagine? I mean, the NBA in the 80s, they're already, making it big with Michael Jordan coming up, and then you add fantasy sports. I mean, it could have been huge.
yeah, and yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Fantasy, NFL fantasy on NFL is yeah, the league's product. So cool, I guess.
Yeah, I use them a lot. I probably shouldn't use them since I lost a lot of the games Sunday.
So I agree. That's because they would have more access and more information as a league, as opposed to just a media company that doesn't obviously get all the inside information, whereas the league has more of it. So probably the content potentially could be much better. Sure. um all right, so towards the end of our discussion, I mean, we've already talked about it, but what do you see, potential problematic issues with fantasy sports? Because, I mean, let's be honest, it's a soft form of gambling, which
Oh yeah.
isn't good. So, what other potential problematic issues do you see in fantasy sports?
Well, for the gambler addict, he might. I mean, we talk about DraftKings. I mean, every week you're putting money in there and you're winning and losing. I mean, that's huge. I think obviously there's some people that are just not right in the head and they're mental, and like we mentioned, the Bartman guy from the Cubs. People send death threats to that guy. It's like, dude, relax. You go get some help. You might run into that with fantasy sports, where there's a guy with a gambling addiction. And all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers, throws 4 interceptions and they lose the game, and all of a sudden he's looking for Aaron Rodgers. Like, where's this guy? I'm going to go get him. And I mean, it's more of a side issue, but I feel like some people, there's a thing where people make a living off of this, which is insane. So what happens when it's kind of like, you work in sales, you have that one great month and you're making all this money, and the next month you're just slumping, you don't make that much money. I feel like it's just a gamble if you're doing this and seeing how much money you make. You might have just a bad season and you're making nothing. Kind of a risk. I'm not sure I want to do this as a career. It's just a fun little side hobby. But I
Yeah.
do see people taking this a little too seriously.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, the problem, it becomes problem when the stakes are higher. Like, I never played any fantasy where there were money involved, like the prize or whatever. So I don't know how that environment is, like how competitive people can become. But I imagine, if there's some money on the line, then it could be something. Because I remember one time I was playing basketball. It was early days. They didn't even have that can't cut list. I don't know if you have that in your NFL. Like, there are certain players that you can't drop. They're just too good to be released.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. So towards the end of regular seasons, one guy who probably realized that he's not, gonna win anything, he just released all his players. And whoever was online at that time, could have grabbed all the best players. So I was among those lucky ones because I was constantly checking. So I took Rasheed Wallace. I remember some other like really good players for free. And you would think, okay, if there was money on the table for the winning side, it wouldn't be fair. So I would be upset. So yeah, imagine if there's money involved, then some kind of all kind of problems can arise.
And a competitive person getting really pissed off, like, hey man, like I didn't know this guy was going to drop all these players. I would have been online ready to go to pick these guys. This is ridiculous. And they get all mad. And I mean, friendships are lost in this sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine who I used to work with and play softball with too from this TV station. Who I'm the commissioner of this league, and I have to deal with this guy every year because he's just complaining. Hey, Manny, how come we're not doing keepers? How come we're not doing like, dude? If you don't like it, quit, leave. I'm like, we don't work together. We don't see each other anymore. Just leave. Like, I don't care. I'm done. You talk about the players being dropped. We had another guy that won the first year, and he had the trophy, and the next year he just didn't care. And so halfway in, he started dropping his players. And thankfully, we were all online and we all picked up his guys, but that could have been bad where maybe that one guy that complains would have been pissed off because we picked up all the best players and now he's in trouble. But yeah, I can see that being where someone say, hey, this is bullshit, because I wasn't there. And now you guys got all these, they got LaMelo Ball and Trae Young and Jokic, yeah, I can see, and perhaps, being physical with fighting and all that stuff. But yeah, sometimes you can take a little overboard and you kind of forget this is just fantasy, relaxed, but the money aspect, I'm sure, but even then I only put $50 per team. So it's not like I'm putting $50 a week.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So, BasketNews.com starts their own fantasy EuroLeague this season. So, Manny, are you going to play?
I kind of want to give it a shot. And then
all right.
And this is where you talk about the guy that knows nothing about hockey but wants to play fantasy hockey. This is where I'm at. I don't know that much about EuroLeague. The only EuroLeague I know is the teams that we got to see 3 years ago through JV USA. And even then, those are like separate leagues. The BBL, British Basketball League, or the Turkish league.
Not all of them were from
just
EuroLeague,
CSKA and a few others.
Some were. Yeah.
But it'd be interesting. And not only that, but like I mentioned, you get into hockey and all of a sudden you get to know these players. And for me, this would be great. I got to know all these Euro players. Maybe some of those players I got to know briefly when they put in the NBA and then they went overseas, or the college players I would recognize that didn't make it and went overseas, or the high school players I covered, they're now overseas. So it'd be very interesting to see that and see how good I do.
Yes. And to your liking, it's once a week. EuroLeague has one, or some weeks they have double weeks, so they have Tuesday, Thursday, so 2 games a week, but it's usually once a week, so it's perfect for your slow ass to catch up, and it's
dude, sign me up.
So yes. Yeah, I'll set up the league. You get an invitation. We'll do the live draft because they will have a live draft this year because that's a novelty in Europe. And yeah, let's try it out. So sure, good stuff. All right, so that's it for us. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflict, which is popular within the United States, busy people, we couldn't have Manny and our guest, who is Professor Bill Sutton, at the same time online. So I'm gonna do the second part of our show alone. But thank you, Manny, for being here with us today, and it's a good talk.
And trust me, I'm kind of bummed. I did give you a couple questions, and I know that Dr. Sutton worked with David Stern. I don't think people know this. I used to work for a TV show where the host of the show used to kind of like push David Stern's buttons. And the last time they had on the show, I think they were talking about how is the NBA rigged with the drafts and all these things. And David Stern got upset. It's like, I hate you.
He says, are you beating your wife?
Yeah, I used to work with Jim Rome. He's like, I hate these acquisitions. And we're like, hey, Jim, are you beating your wife? And Jim's like, I think you're out of
That's
line.
not
We're going to
fair.
go to
Something like
commercial
that.
break.
Yeah.
This is the radio side. We're on the TV side, and we're hearing this. We're like, oh my God. I'm like, hey guys, I think we're going to have to add this to the show. But it was shocking and funny that he said it. But that's David Stern. I mean, I kind of was curious, like, can we talk about how he like that, like behind the camera, like just like if he's pissed off, he's just going to say what he wants to say. But I'm bummed that I think I can't be there for the interview. I mean, these stupid American schedules I got over here. So
All right. Well, there's always next time, so nothing to worry. We'll figure something out. All right, Manny. So thanks for staying up late. I know it's almost midnight where you are, or even past the midnight.
It's past
right?
midnight here. Yeah.
So yeah. So have a good night. Thanks for joining, and see you next time. BasketNews fans, it's my honor and privilege to welcome Professor Bill Sutton. And I was thinking how to best introduce you. And perhaps it's best to just call you a marketing wizard whose accomplishments are best reflected on the long list of your clients, which is, NBA, NFL, the NHL, all those franchises and Division I universities. And of course, as a wonderful teacher who is also the author of those fundamental sports marketing books, which me personally and many other people who are in sport management area studied and grew up with. So hope I introduced you well. If I missed something, please add. But Bill, thank you for joining us and welcome to our podcast. And how are you today?
I'm very good, Mindaugas, and I'm glad to be here with you. It's been a long time since my trip to Lithuania.
All right. So I know you are retired, but you also stay very busy, and I know you do a lot of things. Still do a lot of things, but among one of those things that I closely follow you is tasting different meals at the various restaurants. To me, you look like a fan of gourmet food, which is awesome. I love following your recommendations. And I have one request today before we start with more serious stuff.
Okay.
I remember a few years back when you were in Lithuania, you mentioned this restaurant in the New York City, Serendipity, and their famous frozen hot chocolate. So
exactly.
I did it a few years later. I went to New York City. I visited the Serendipity. I had to book the place a week in advance, but I managed to do it. I got there. I can't say the frozen hot chocolate was the best thing ever. I thought it sounded better than it actually tasted, but nevertheless, the recommendation was awesome. So I have another request. I like grilled Reuben sandwich. Do you know such sandwich, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So because we don't have corned beef in Lithuania, it's not as easily accessible in the shops where you have it plenty in the States. But I like the grilled Reuben. And so I know the place in Wisconsin which serves the best one, but I'm sure you can suggest me what from Florida or New York City, who has the best grilled Reuben?
New York, it would either be the Carnegie Deli or Katz's Deli or the Second Avenue Deli. In Florida, we actually have a grilled grouper Reuben.
Grilled?
Used with fish instead of corned beef.
Oh, okay. What kind of fish do they use for that?
Grouper, it's called.
Okay, grouper fish. All right, I'll try
and
that.
My wife is very partial to the grilled Reuben grouper.
Okay, all right. So yeah, these are. I'm sure these are excellent recommendations. I'll try them on. I'll try them out, and I'll let you know how did. Was it
in
good?
Mindaugas, there's a website called Goldbelly, Goldbely.
Okay.
It ships food all over the world.
So you're saying I could order corned beef through them, right?
Yes, you can just go. You can Google Reuben sandwich, and one of those restaurants will probably send you a kit.
Nice.
So if you go to the App Store and go to Goldbelly, you'll find it.
Goldbelly. That's like belly, a person's belly, right? It's just gold.
Goldbely. Yes, sir.
Okay, nice. All right. So let's start with our main topic, and that is fantasy sports.
Mm-hmm.
And as usual, we're bringing an expert in our podcast to answer all these questions that me and my co-host Manny discussed previously. So Bill is our today's expert on the topic, and I want to start with some basic explanation of why do people play fantasy sports. So what's the main sort of logic behind it?
The main logic is social interaction and competition. It's something you do with your friends and you have fun, but you want to win. And so you have prizes and you have contests, but it's a way of interacting. Oftentimes there's a draft party where you go and all get together and do a draft physically, but in the COVID world, it's usually online. And then at the end of the year, there's some celebration for the winner, and usually sometimes some shame and embarrassment for the person that came in last place. So this year I am in a fantasy league with, believe it or not, a group of students that I had almost 40 years ago from Robert Morris University in Pittsburgh. And they asked me if I would be in their fantasy league this year. So my son, Jason, and we have a team, and we're in the fantasy football league with them.
I was going to ask, so which sport is that? So football. So you just started then, right?
We just started and went through our first game. And I think we did fairly well, even though we did not play Dak Prescott of the Cowboys, which now we regret. We regret now, but they were playing the Buccaneers, and we didn't think that he would have a big game, but he did.
So who did you have your number one quarterback then?
We played Trevor Lawrence because they were playing the Texans, and he threw 3 touchdowns and he threw for 300 yards, but he also threw 3 interceptions.
Right. So what was your draft pick? Like how high did you pick?
Neither of us were able to be on the draft call, so we had the snake. We had the ESPN draft for us.
Okay, got it.
So Dak Prescott was our 4th round pick, and I think our first player pick was Travis Kelce, which was a very good pick for us.
That's what's his tight end, right?
A tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, who was 2 touchdowns and had a big game on Sunday.
Wow, I wouldn't thought that the tight end would be a good position stats wise, but I guess
that one is. He's probably one of the 2 that you would have that would have a lot of numbers.
Because from last week's box score, when I checked, I thought the best guy in the fantasy this year would be the Arizona quarterback.
He had a big game. Right. Patrick Mahomes is always a good pick.
Yeah, because they also run and then they pass, so always.
Lamar Jackson's probably a good pick. There's a lot of people that run and throw that would be good picks.
Well, so interesting. You said that it's a interaction between people. So because my guess would have been, wanting to experience that sort of a sports management or franchise running type of feeling where you.
That's there. It's there. It's more important to some people than others. For most people, it's the social interaction, but it's also the ability to show off. That if you win, then you know football better than anyone else. Yeah. But that's there. But the group I'm in with, it's primarily social interaction and a lot of teasing and taunting each other.
Okay, so and then what's the history of fantasy sports? When did it start and how did it start? Because obviously I assume it originated in the States, right?
Yeah, I guess more than 30 years ago. And it probably started with baseball. Mm-hmm. I'm not positive, but I think it started with baseball. There's a lot of people that played fantasy baseball before the other sports came along. And, fantasy football had maybe gotten to be the most popular. Again, because ESPN and a number of other sites have contests and add to it and make things happen for you and facilitates it, makes it easier for you. But baseball was the first one. Then football, there's basketball, there's soccer, and there's actually fantasy golf, where you draft different players on the tour, and either their winnings or their rankings dictate how well you do.
So this is sort of a chicken and or an egg question. So do you think you have to like sports in order to play fantasy, or is it possible to start getting involved with fantasy sports and then it sort of drags you into actually liking the sport?
I think the latter. I think there's some people that want to be part of something like the social thing I talked about, and you want to be perceived to be connected to things that are important to other people. And when you do things like that, you might join something that you're not very good at, but you hope to learn more about it and get better, but enjoy yourself with your friends. And that's one of the great things about fantasy sports, is it enables you to do that. And like I said, with the way that ESPN sets it up, that they'll draft for you, you don't even have to be that knowledgeable. You just have to then follow through and submit your lineup every week.
So then you're saying, like, I don't need to like football to play football, fantasy football, right?
No, you don't need to.
Wow.
You probably have more enjoyment if you do, but you don't need to. It's not a requirement.
Okay.
And it's not a requirement that you're knowledgeable.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating because when I was teaching one class, I set the fantasy league for my class, and I even awarded, like, whoever finishes first, gets the A+ or whatever for the whole course. But it was baseball because that was during the fall and then the spring semester. So there were any other sports going on. So I set up the baseball league, and none of my students, baseball is not popular in Europe. None of them knew baseball. I of course explained the rules, whatever, but it didn't catch up. And I thought, like, okay, first you need to like the sport in order to play, but then you're saying that you don't have to, so it just...
Well, I think baseball is more. I think baseball, you really do have to like it because there's a baseball game every day,
right?
Whereas the NFL is once a week, and so it doesn't have the time commitment that baseball does. Of all the fantasy sports, baseball would be the most time consuming, followed by basketball and hockey, and the NFL and golf would have the least because those would be once a week.
Interesting. So that's exactly what I was going to ask you, is how much frequency of actual games is important? Because to me personally, I think the more often, the better. That's why I don't like football or what we have in Europe, because in Europe we have one game a week in some international tournament and then one game in national league, which are separate. So technically you have 1 week per game, and to me that's not enough. Like, I can't wait the whole week for something to happen. So I
see, and I'm the opposite.
Okay. Wow.
I love baseball. Baseball's my favorite sport.
Okay.
But I would never play fantasy baseball because it just takes too much of my time. I wouldn't want to fill out a lineup every day. But there are people that love doing that for the same reasons you just talked about it.
Me.
I just happen not to be one of those people.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Because, yes, I just started my fantasy playoffs in baseball. I made with the third overall in standings, and I'm in the playoffs now. And I love it because every day you have a whole bunch of games. So you have action. Everything changes every day. And basketball similar, hockey similar. Whereas football, you have all week to wait for Sunday, Monday to have something going on. So
yeah, and you spend that whole week thinking about your lineup, whereas in baseball you have to think about a lineup every day.
Yeah. So, well, and then what you said, I just pulled the numbers yesterday. Like, what's the most important fantasy sports? So it's 78% of all participants play fantasy football. So yes, it's overwhelming fantasy. And as you said, it's 13% even play fantasy golf and whatnot. So baseball is 39 and something like that. So I was surprised that football is so popular, despite the fact that they just have one game per week. But I guess for someone,
But there's all in the States, there's TV shows, there's entire television
right?
shows
Yeah.
about fantasy football that you can watch every week. Sunday, on Saturday, you can watch your ESPN fantasy football preview for the week, and they'll give you lineup suggestions and talk about which players to watch and which matchups. So they've invested a lot of resources in order to promote the popularity of it. And what you're going to see now, the evolution, you haven't asked me this question yet, but I know it's coming, is there a link between fantasy sports and gambling?
Yeah.
And absolutely there is. And in fact, if you think about it, fantasy sports is low risk gambling, whereas gambling is high risk, high reward. Usually fantasy sports don't have the reward that gambling does. But the same thing, you're vested in it, you're knowledgeable about it, and you want to take your knowledge and profit from your knowledge.
Right. And then also it creates certain situations when you can get advantage, when you might be tempted to take advantage of it because you might be more knowledgeable than the others or have opportunity to maybe impact the end game.
Certainly.
Not. All right. So what league? I know you worked with the NBA, and so what would be the league's role in providing fantasy sports service? Do they play any kind of role, or is it just the media company's business?
No, they play a league. I mean, a lot of teams have sponsors. So they might have a fantasy lounge, like the 49ers have a fantasy sports lounge.
Right, but
where all the games are on TV and you can go when you're at the game, you can go and you can participate in the fantasy sports at the team. The team's facilitating it. But you're going to see more and more of that now move to gambling. That there'll be gambling at the stadiums and arenas and venues now. And teams will have lounges for that and opportunities to bet at the game.
yeah. So, but when we talk about the creation of fantasy league, so would it be would the NBA create something on their own, or
No, they do it in conjunction with one of their media partners.
with media partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but then can you use fantasy sports as a marketing tool?
Well, sure. Oh, absolutely. If you're playing fantasy sports, it means you're more connected to the game than somebody just watching a game on television, because you're connected not just to a team, you're connected to players on your fantasy roster. And those fantasy rosters could be spread among 10 to 15 different teams, depending on how many people are on your roster. And so the more varied your players are, the more you need to follow the sport to keep up with it. So you'll probably watch more basketball games or more football games or more highlight shows to keep up with your teams. So you become more of a fan, maybe not of teams, but of your players. You need to have awareness, so you follow it more. You watch more to become more aware.
So, but then who would benefit? Who could benefit the most? Is it the league? Is it
everybody.
the team?
The
or
league,
is
the teams,
players?
The league, the teams, the media, everybody benefits from it.
How about the players?
Good question. If it was in the NBA, if fantasy was basketball related income, which it isn't right now, they would. But gambling is basketball related income. So the players will benefit from people wagering on basketball games. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so gambling is among BRI, and then if you get more from gambling, players get their share. So they are more.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, the actual gambling itself isn't part of the BRI, but the sponsorship of MGM or whoever it is paying a large multi-million-dollar sponsorship agreement, that is part of BRI.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Well, okay, so we touched on the players, and so I wanted to ask, because obviously they're the competitive people who like to be the best at whatever they do, and those stories on the net where they comment on the NBA 2K ratings, like too low, too high, et cetera, et cetera. So I was wondering, do they care about their performance on the fantasy leagues? Like, do players actually care which round they were drafted, or like how many teams picked them, et cetera, et cetera? Like, do they pay
Yes.
attention
Oh,
to
yeah.
that?
Especially the thing that they're most concerned about is their ratings in Madden, the Madden game, the Madden football game, because that ranks you according to your ability and according to your position. So if you're the number one rated wide receiver, you can actually take that with your agent to negotiate your next salary.
So
there's a lot of pride in the players. And then there's just pride.
Yeah.
You want to be the best. You want to be the highest rated wide receiver. You want to be the best rated quarterback.
So, but do you think, or do you know if players actually play fantasy sports the
I'm
same
sure
that they actually play in real life?
I'm sure they do. Yeah.
But so there is an issue. It's not forbidden by teams or leagues to participate in the game.
No. Mm-mm. No.
Because technically there could be a situation where I'm, let's say, Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I don't have myself on my team. Other team has me, and I'm facing that team this week. And so if I score a lot of points, my points will go to that team, and then they might beat me. So maybe I don't score.
No.
I mean, it's a minor thing.
You're making too much money to perform
right
with your salary, and you're never going to embarrass yourself. Your pride is much, much more important than that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm sure. In this podcast, we also try to, look for similarities between the European and American markets. And I don't know how much consulting have you done with European companies, but I know that in Europe, people aren't as devoted to statistics as they are in North America. But do you think the fantasy sports are as popular in Europe as they are in North America?
That's a good question. In the U.S., we have so many sports that I think you have a good audience for everything. In Europe, you have a primary sport, and you're so passionate about your club, your team. I don't know if it would translate to rooting for a player on another team for your fantasy. I think it would be not as popular in Europe for that reason. People in the U.S. are passionate about their sports and they're passionate about their teams, but not as passionate as Europe. I mean, in Europe, it's generational. Whenever I have gone to some football matches in England, I mean, that's generational. Your grandfather and your father and your uncles and your brothers all rooted for this team. And it's become part of your tradition. You're part of your family, part of your culture. And so it's not that way in the U.S., not to the degree that is in Europe.
But so, yeah, you touched upon how fans are different, and I absolutely agree with you. And me, I'm I'm a fan of American culture, and sometimes I really disapprove the way fans take so seriously sports in Europe. Like, to me, I'm always telling people, come on, it's just sports, it's entertainment. You don't need to take that home with you, that loss or whatever
No,
but
it's so much more. Like I went to a basketball game in Bologna, and they keep the fans separated.
Yeah.
So one end zone is the fans for one team, one end zone is the fans for the other team. In between them is the army and the police. And when the game is over, they make sure that the fans leave in separate directions so they don't immediately congregate right outside the venue. And that's passion causing that. And the fact that, when I was the game I was watching, the one team was winning by 30 points with 5 minutes to go. In the U.S., everybody would have left already.
Yeah.
But in Italy, they were still chanting and being, how would I say this politely? Questioning the parentage of the other team's players is how I would say it, and being very, very negative and very, very critical and very emotional. And you wouldn't see that in the U.S., not to the degree that you see it in Europe.
So, but for you as a marketing specialist, is that better customer or worse, or it's just different? And
Well, it's different, but I would much rather have the passion that I have in Europe because it makes it easier to sell tickets. I mean, the worst thing I could be is apathetic. If I love you or I hate you, that's something I could work with as a marketer. But if I don't care, if I'm apathetic, if I have other interests, then it's harder to market to you.
yeah, but I'm like, so my question is, why don't nobody, average 20,000 people in Europe?
Well, I mean, the U.S. spends a lot of time creating a fan experience. We've got to get you off the couch and into the venue. How do I do that? Well, I have to make it more than the game. And in Europe, the emphasis is on the game.
And so,
like when I went to games in Italy, people would arrive 10 or 15 minutes before the game and they would leave immediately after. And halftime was just an opportunity to go out and smoke a cigarette.
Yes.
In the U.S., the earlier I get you there, the better. The longer I keep you there, the better. And halftime, I've got every option in the world for your food and beverage liking. So, I mean, the U.S. has made the game more than just the game. And in Europe, the game is probably 90 to 95% of the experience in Europe. And in the U.S., it might be 60.
Okay, I see.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
And the venues in the U.S. are built to keep you there and accommodate you in comfort and make you want to stay longer and make you want to get there earlier, and not in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's go back to fantasy sports. And we touched already upon it a little bit, that it's soft form of gambling. But what other potential problematic issues do you see in fantasy sports?
You don't develop an affinity for a team, which is what the league would want you to do, or the team would want you to do. In fantasy, you develop an affinity really for a player or players. So the connection between you and the team and you and the league isn't as strong as somebody whose affinity is more with the team and more with the league. So in other words, when my son and I couldn't make the draft, we're both big fans of the Pittsburgh Steelers. We don't have any Pittsburgh Steelers on our team. So we're a little disappointed at that. But if it came down to me rooting for the Steelers against the players on my fantasy team, I would absolutely root for the players on the Steelers. Mm-hmm. I'd rather lose my fantasy game than the Steelers lose a game. But a real true fantasy player would rather see his or her fantasy team perform and be the number one thing.
Yeah, interesting. And sure, because next year I might draft totally different players, and then, as you said, okay, this year I might like Giannis, but then next year it's gonna be Embiid, and then I'm gonna cheer for him. So yeah,
sure.
Yeah. So what do you think are the latest trends? Like, which way is the fantasy sports going? Is it a growing industry in your mind?
Absolutely.
And why?
Because the media companies like ESPN and these betting shows and everything else facilitate it. They make it easy for you to participate. You don't have to know a lot. You don't have to organize it. They'll do everything for you. There's some where you just pay the media company and the media company pays the winner. You don't have to do anything at all. So we facilitate it and make it easy for people to play.
And then obviously the latest events of this pandemic that we had locked the people up, and then it sort of brought the necessity of more entertainment that we could do in the house, and then the internet connection things obviously are important. So that also plays the role, I guess, in the future in the popularity of fantasy sports because it can be done online all the time.
Sure. Access is the most important thing. It's why, the internet and COVID combined spurred the growth of esports more than anything I've ever seen. And esports is the only thing in the world of sports that's truly organic and truly global. Because I could sit in my room to play League of Legends and I could play somebody in Korea without really having to do anything.
But do I have to worry that esports would replace real sports at any point?
Yes, you do. You do.
Really? Because that scares a lot of me.
Well, if I enjoy it, like the League of Legends, what makes League of Legends work? The League of Legends is a game that evolves. And as you get better, the game gets harder. And that's the challenge, okay? Besides it being global and organic, the game grows. And so you have to continue to get better and better and better. Whereas if you're playing NBA 2K, you're as good as the game is, and your outcome is dependent upon your opponent. There's not going to be a surprise in the game. Like the basketball is not going to go flat. Whereas in League of Legends, you're going to go around a corner on a different level. There's a dragon that's going to melt your sword, and all of a sudden you can't finish the game. So it's different. It's a different world.
Right, but then the spectators, will they switch from real sports, watching an actual game, to esports?
The spectators of esports watch because they either want to improve their own game, which is not the case with, a fantasy football player. You're probably not thinking you're going to get better playing football because you don't play football.
Right. Yeah.
But in League of Legends, you could watch somebody and improve your skills and you could become better. Or you could just admire that person for being able to do something you can't do.
Crazy. So I have to do this because obviously not every day we have such a, marketing guru, as I said in the beginning, available to us. So BasketNews, the website that I work for, they are launching their fantasy basketball service. What can you can you help us out and just give us an idea how we could market it best? Because I like the sentence that's on your Bill Sutton Associates website. Leave no money on the table. That's the best one. So how can we take all that money?
Yeah. So if I'm a subscriber to your service,
okay,
right? Do you have different levels of subscriber?
No, just the users. Yeah.
Okay. So I would probably have, if you're a user, you're going to get a special pick. My special insight as to who I would play this week in my fantasy team. Okay. But if I'm a platinum member, I'm going to actually give you the best lineup you can play all week. So I'm going to give you more. The more you spend with me, the better analysis I'm going to give you access to. The more information I'm going to give you so that hopefully you can be successful.
Okay. All right. But you say best lineup. You don't get the first picks in every draft. You just get more information.
No. All I'm saying is if I was playing this week, Russell Westbrook is playing, the Lakers are playing Oklahoma City.
Okay.
Here's the reasons I would play Russell Westbrook in this game.
Okay. ...
And you got to be a subscriber to get that from me.
Right. So you wouldn't give that information to everybody, just those,
no.
As you said, platinum.
There's a certain level of information I would give to all my subscribers. And then there's a next level that I would give to my premium subscribers. In other words, I'm telling you that if you want to make money in your business, I would be creating a premium level of your product. So if you don't subscribe, you don't get it. You get very little information. If you subscribe, you get the basic information. And then if you pay an extra fee and you're a platinum subscriber, you get the most insight and the most recommendations and the best chance to be successful.
I know you worked with late David Stern. Can I show
Yes,
you one video on YouTube where
absolutely.
he as a commissioner would always call the first the players who get drafted. So
Yes,
here's the video. Wait, my colleague will let you know. So this will be the video where he calls out our legend. Is it on? Can you see the link?
I see the link. Yeah.
Okay. So this is the video where he calls out the name of Arvydas Sabonis.
Last pick of the first round of the NBA draft, America's game, the Portland Trailblazers select Arvydas Sabonis of the Soviet Union.
Oh, well, now that's going to be an interesting selection.
Well, so he takes a long pause, and then he calls Arvydas Sabonis. So we're just wondering, like, what was his like, what was behind it? Like, why did he take so long to call this? Is this because he was from Soviet Union or something like that?
No, I think it was because he realized the importance of announcing that pick, that the global implications, how important that pick was going to be to grow the game of basketball globally. And I think he was just savoring the moment.
Yes, because in the beginning he mentions the game that America created. So yes, it's our game,
Yes.
but somebody else is coming into that game. So that was due to that, right?
And he was always, always, always interested in growing the game globally. That was very important to him. It became America's game, became the world's game.
Yes, he was interested, and he absolutely did it, I think. I mean, that's his legacy, I would say, the NBA that it is today.
I happened to have the opportunity to travel with him to the first China games when the Cavaliers, when they had LeBron, played the Magic when they had Dwight Howard. And it was almost like he was a proud father giving birth, witnessing a birth when we were in Shanghai and Macau. He was very, very proud of what happened and how it went.
LeBron versus Howard, and I'm sure the crowd was big, right? Because it
was interesting. The crowd started off pro LeBron, but Dwight Howard came out in traditional Mandarin attire, and the owner of the Magic had made sure all the players had phrases that they could speak in Mandarin before they went on the trip. So the Magic became very, very embraced by the Chinese community, and given the fact that the mascot was a dragon, which a dragon is very important in Chinese culture, they became very popular during that trip.
Nice. Okay, so before I let you go, one last question. I went through your most recommended book list. It's great list. I have to shamefully admit that not a lot of books I read on it, but one particularly caught my attention. The Customer Comes Second by Hal Rosenbluth.
Rosenbluth. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure it's some kind of hidden thing behind it, because customer never comes second. So what's in that book? Like, what's the meaning behind
it? The premise is that you treat your employees well, you reward your employees, you make your employees feel important, you empower your employees, and if they're happy and content, they will make the customer experience the best possible way. But if you have employees that don't feel fulfilled, don't feel connected, don't feel empowered, that it's just a job, then the customer really does come second because they're not paying attention.
Got it. Interesting. Promise, the very, very last one. I saw you also had Cleveland Browns among your clients. Is that correct?
No, Cleveland Cavaliers and Cleveland Indians.
Oh, yeah. Cleveland Indians. C. I saw the
Yeah.
C letter. So they're the ones who are changing their name and logo for the next season, right?
That's correct.
Were you involved in the process?
I was not, and I'll go on record to your listeners and say, maybe the worst logo in all professional sports.
I was gonna
Coming up.
ask you, how did you like this? What's the name of it? The
The
Guardians.
Guardians.
Yes. So
Okay,
you don't like it.
I'm not crazy about the name, but I'm a smart enough marketer to know that if I was naming them the Guardians, and I would invest in a partnership with Marvel, and I could tie it into Guardians of the Galaxy and have a theme throughout the season, that would be good. But the logo itself is just terrible. It looks like the movie
3D.
Major League. It looks like the logo of the Major League movie, where the ball is wearing a mohawk, but this ball is in like a vice. I just think it's the worst logo I've seen. I can't imagine anybody spending any money on that logo. And the other thing I'll tell you is they're involved in a lawsuit because they don't even, when they did their due diligence, they did not uncover the fact that there is a team called the Cleveland Guardians that's a roller derby team, and they actually own the nickname.
Oh,
So they're being sued by the roller derby team for the rights to use the name.
Interesting. So then, what's the Washington football team's future? I hope they don't leave the Washington football team, because for a while there was some rumors that they might actually stick to it. They will change it.
Well, supposedly, but the Washington football team is one of the finalists. I think they have 8 finalists.
Okay.
And they're teasing it out. But I will tell you this, after this fiasco in Cleveland, there's going to be a lot of attention and a lot of pressure put on Washington because they've had a longer time. They've had over 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And they better really come up with something that's going to resonate with the market and with the media and with marketers.
So, but what's your, like, which one would you promote? Would you be for Washington football team staying, or you still prefer a new nickname?
I've seen Red Wolves. I've seen Red Hogs. I've seen Monuments. Some of them some of them are very creative. I think there's a lot of people that would like Red Hogs because the Redskins, the offensive line used to be called the Hogs.
Yeah.
And so the Red Hogs has some cachet in the marketplace. Okay. But in Cleveland, I was for the nickname Spiders because in the early days of professional baseball in Cleveland, there was a team called the Spiders.
Okay.
And I thought it would have been a nice nod to your history and your tradition.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. It was great time, and it was great to see you. I had lots of information, but the most important one is on the grilled Reuben. I can't wait, and hope to see you in the States and maybe take you out for a dinner one day. All right?
I would love that, Mindaugas. You take care of yourself.
Thank you, sir. Take care. Bye-bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.
So, BasketNews fans, thanks for watching Hoops Journeymen. If you like, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. And as always, you can listen to our podcasts on all major audio platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. Thank you again. See you next time.